Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. Nice crowd, nice to see. Welcome you that are viewing us to a regular Oak Harbor City Council meeting, March 21st. It is 6 p.m. We will start our meeting with an invocation led by Pastor Ron Lawler. We invite you to stand and join us for the invocation. Ron is the pastor of the Family Bible Church, and we will follow that with a Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead.
If you would like to follow in prayer, our Father in heaven, we want to thank you for the privilege of living in this beautiful city, in this wonderful state. We thank you for those who serve us and represent us to our community, and pray for your blessing and your grace upon them as they make decisions, as they contemplate those things that must be done. May they have grace and wisdom. Thank you for the opportunity to live in this beautiful place. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Lawler. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you may be seated. We actually have one council member that is not with us tonight, and I'm looking for a motion to excuse Councilman Jim Campbell. Yes, Councilor Munns.
I move we excuse Councilman Jim Campbell for the meeting.
Second.
So we got a motion and a second, Munns and Heisen, to excuse Jim Campbell from tonight's meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of agenda. How would the council like to handle tonight's agenda? Councilor Eisen.
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
We've got a second, or we've got a motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Councilor Wassinger, to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are already on to section 2. Moving right along. Presentations, we don't have any proclamations tonight. We do have a presentation, a community presentation by the Fire Department, and it is their annual report for fiscal year 2016, and I believe we've got some people from our fire department here. See the lights dimming and the Chief Merrill coming to the podium. Chief?
I did this for mood music tonight just to make it even better. I'm really impressed that such a turnout for the fire department annual report. I wasn't expecting this. This is great.
Don't get too big ahead.
Sorry.
Just in case.
So it is time for our annual report. I trust that you've had the opportunity to look at what was presented in the packet. First off, I have to thank Angela Bronstein because, as we know, Angela takes all the information and puts it together, and she makes it look absolutely spectacular. So thanks to Angela. Thanks to all the firefighters that put information into this. But Angie is the one that did all the work, and I get to have all the fun and present to you. So when you look at all this stuff, think Angela. If you really, really like it, think me. No, not really. But I'm looking forward to presenting this evening. And have you ever wondered what it's like to ride in a fire engine to an emergency? We sped this up just a little bit, so we're not driving this fast. You notice we go into oncoming lanes of traffic. We scoot on down the highway in this case. We're going to look at that slide a little bit closer here in a little bit. But just give you an idea of what we encounter when we're driving. And in this case, we're going lights and siren. And we're going really fast, it looks like, but really we're not. And this is a relatively quiet drive going through town. Again, into the oncoming lanes of traffic to get around. And overall, this drive took 4 minutes and 50 seconds to get from the station to this location for the call. But that just gives you an idea of what we get to see when we're driving through town with lights and siren. So who are we? And how do we protect the citizens? What are our fiscal resources, and where are we heading over the next few years? So let's take a look. So who do we serve? We serve the citizens of Oak Harbor and all the visitors that come here to enjoy our beautiful city. And that is a gorgeous photo, I think. So some statistics for you a little bit. We've got a population of 22,693 people. This is the end of 2016. There's 9,965 households within the city limits. We cover 9.7 square miles. We look at 1,218 businesses or commercial occupancies that we do inspections on every year. And this is a big one. The total value of the city of Oak Harbor is $1.74 billion is what this fire department protects on a daily basis. So the sun comes out, slides over a little bit. And back in 1992, when our station was first built, we have tripled in size from 3.39 square miles in 92 to 9.714 square miles. Just give you an idea of the growth pattern. So there's a little bit of the city, and that's what we look like. And as recent as this picture was done, we've even added some property since this picture was put into the annual report. So there's a little more property in here than what this shows. And there we are currently right there where our patch is at. Of course, we get all kinds of training involved. We're going to talk about training here in a little bit. We use the ladder truck to go on a call here not too long ago downtown. And we enjoy a Class 4 rating by the Survey and Rating Bureau that we've talked about before on numerous occasions, 10 being the worst, 1 being the best. And one of our goals that we continue to have is we want to get to a 3. That's what we're shooting for in the long term. What does that mean for the citizens? You could see a reduction in your fire insurance. And we talk about this occasionally, but some insurance company says going from a 4 to 3 means nothing. Other insurance companies will say that could be a 25% decrease in your insurance premiums. So it just depends on your carrier and whether it's a business or a family or an occupancy. So how do we compare with other fire departments? We are consistently 1/4 to 1/3 of the resources available to us in comparable jurisdictions. So who do we compare to? We look at Aberdeen, Anacortes, Burlington, Arlington, Moses Lake, Mount Vernon, Mukilteo, Port Angeles, Tumwater, and Walla Walla is who we utilized as our comparables. Those are close to us when we look at size and dollars coming in and just the layout of their cities. So when we look at our career firefighters, we have 11. The average of all those cities, they have 28. So it kind of breaks down, looks like this. Our 11 firefighters, including myself and the deputy chief. So we also have to talk about our paid on call. And I know Mr. Almberg brings this up occasionally about our paid on call. Then they're a vital asset to us. The Survey and Rating Bureau looks at 3 paid on calls equals 1 career firefighter when we look at the demographics of our fire department. So you take a look at it when it breaks down, we still have 21 firefighters, but when we compare to our averages, all the other cities have, in the average, 28 career firefighters. When we look at the firefighters per population of 1,000, we have 0.48 when the other cities in our comparables have 1.37 firefighters per population of 1,000. When we look at call volume, our career guys go on 107 calls a year, and the average goes on 146. We have 1 fire station. They have an average of 2. We cover 10 square miles, roughly. They cover 7 square miles out of each of their stations. This is kind of an interesting fact. When we look at the cost per person in the city of Oak Harbor, ours is $92 per person. Our comparables is $159. So when you look at all the numbers and figures, we've got about a $1.5 million less that we pay for the city to have the fire department than our comparables do. That's a pretty good chunk of change on an annual basis. So how do we protect? So here's our organizational chart. That's us on paper. We have the administration department. We have our prevention division. We have our suppression division. We have our training division, our facilities division, and we have the Department of Emergency Management. So we're going to talk a little bit about the suppression department a little bit. So when we look at our calls, we did 1,177 calls in 2016, which is only a 0.34% increase over 2015. So not much of an increase. But when you look at the demographics of our calls, you can see 536 medical calls, 245 false alarms. And when we consider false alarms, what are those? If an alarm system activates, but we find nothing, it did its job, but it's technically a false alarm. Our service calls, somebody gets stuck in an elevator, somebody needs help getting from a wheelchair to a bed or from the bed into an ambulance, that's a service call. Good intent. We only had 62 fires for the entire year. We're going to talk about that here a little bit later on. During 2016, we had 9% of our time we were on concurrent calls, which is down compared to 2015, because in 2015 that was 11% of the time. So when we look at how does it, between the staffing goes, day shift from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., 68% of our calls come in that time frame. The nighttime, 32% of our calls come in. 22 structure fires, 1/4 of our medical calls are car accidents, about 128 car accidents that we responded to last year, from very minor injury to some major injuries. We look at our mutual aid and auto aid. As you know, we have an auto aid pact with North Whidbey Fire and Rescue, which benefits us and them as well. You can see what our mutual aid looks like. We went 97 times mutual aid to somebody else, whether it be North Whidbey, NAS Whidbey, Central Whidbey Fire and Rescue, South Whidbey Fire, Oak Harbor Police Department. And then when you look at the calls received, we had assistance 78 times. So we spend more time going out and assisting our neighbors than this time they came in and assisted us. So some of the calls we go on, if you take a look, you can see the wheels inside the house, a car fire that we responded to, a dryer fire that we responded to, another car fire, and you get an idea of what it's like to go to a car fire. And all the while, we've got to be concerned about, is the gas tank going to explode? Are the tires going to explode? Are the bumpers going to explode? And really, when you look at this is a pretty quick knockdown of that fire. And the fire's out. So we look at response times, and we've talked about response times before. National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 10 says there should be a 4-minute response time from the station to the call locations for at least 90% of all the incidents within the city. The ISO, the Insurance Service Office, says our area should be no greater than 1.5 road miles for our first due engine company. So the council has set 5 minutes for fire calls and 4 minutes for medical calls. You look at our response time for fire calls, 3 minutes and 54 seconds. That's pretty darn good. Now, I don't want to say that's misleading, but in this case, all of our calls were relatively close to the station, or we were close to the incident before it occurred. Next year, we could look at this, and we could have 8, 9, 10-minute response times. Just depends where that fire is located and how long it takes us to get there. Same way in the medical calls. The council has set 4 minutes for medical calls, and we were hitting 4 minutes and 20 seconds on the average. Our average time throughout the city for all of our calls is 4 minutes and 26 seconds, which I think is really darn good for a 4-person crew on during the daytime. So we also have to look at how can we do things better. Our guys have to gear up, put all of their bunker gear on in 60 seconds or less. So the call goes to the dispatch center, they have to process that call, they get it out over the airways, they tone us out. Our guys have 60 seconds to get fully bunkered up. And I would challenge almost any of you in here to give that a shot and see how well you do. Mr. Servadius has tried it before, Ms. Hazan has tried it before, and it takes a little bit of time. And then we talk about teaching our drivers how to drive safely in the emergency mode. Figure you're driving something that weighs anywhere from 40 to 50,000 pounds through the city. We want to be safe. And you're going to see that in this case, the highway's backed up. We go into oncoming lanes of traffic. That poor car that's looking at us, we're driving right towards them. You know, that's why it's important to pull off to the right. Now, I want you to watch this really close. It's a command vehicle. The time's going to slow down, and watch to the left side. We've slowed it. He has slowed down immensely. Look at this beige-colored van,
Just- he's right in front of me.
and we had the green light to go through that intersection. They ran a red light. Here we are again going onto the oncoming lane of traffic in order to get through the intersections. And again, on the highway, going on to oncoming traffic. Again, that's why it's important to pull off to the right side of the road to give us the right of way as much as possible. So we look at technology. How can we do things better? We use computer-aided dispatch. We have a mapping software. All of our vehicles carry the MDC, that thing there that you see on the right side of the picture, and that's tied into our Spillman dispatch. Now, the nice part about that is as soon as the telephone at ICOM rings and they enter the information before it's ever toned out, it comes up on that screen, and we see the call before it's actually being dispatched. What does that help? It could knock off 35, 40 seconds easily just trying to get the dispatch out. So we can make up that minute of getting our gear on. We utilize mapping software that can get us to the scene quicker. Mobile technology. And when you take a look at this video, we happen to be around the corner. We saw it on our MDC. We got to the call before it was ever dispatched. So we got there in 46 seconds. The guy walks up with his helmet camera, looks in, makes sure nobody's there. This is an unoccupied house where a vagrant was staying in the shed, and the cause of the fire was his cooking material. And you can see how quickly we were able to put the fire out. So this is the case of, we saw it on the screen, we responded, we got there before the tones ever came out, which makes a difference. Now, this is a house fire we went to, which we think was a good response time. From the station to the call was 3 minutes and 36 seconds. And this is what we encountered, 3 minutes and 36 seconds from the time we were dispatched. So if you ever had an idea what it's like to go inside of a burning building, this is what it looks like. And that's after just 3.5 minutes of burn time. So it's amazing how fast fires grow. So we are staffed 24/7. We are a combination fire department, which means we have career firefighters. They work the day shift, as we've talked before. And we have our paid-on-call fires that we call back and backfill the station at night. It's a very cost-effective way for the city. It saved the city thousands upon thousands of dollars every year by the way we do our staffing. We hire back one paid-on-call so that during the daytime we have 4 firefighters on shift. We hire back 4 paid-on-calls at night, again to have a 4-person crew, so at least we've got a full engine company when we go to an incident. And our paid-on-calls are also coming back in on off-duty time to respond to other incidents. And they're going to come in for fires, CPR calls, motor vehicle accidents, hazardous materials incidents, and any other time there's a request for any kind of manpower. So we rely heavily on our paid-on-call. So location matters. We take a look at the city, the layout of the city, how large it's gotten, and we look at the 4 quadrants. When we look at the northeast quadrant, very high call volume. 1/4 of our calls are up in the northeast quadrant. Our response time meets all of the standards, which would make sense when you consider the location of the fire station there on Whidbey Avenue. Again, we can get up to the northeast quadrant pretty quickly. When we look at the southeast quadrant, again, a high call volume, 298 calls, about 1/4 of the calls to that area. Our response time meets all the standards. When we look at the northwest quadrant, a low, very low call volume, we looked at only 12% in the northwest quadrant. Our response time exceeds the city standards as set by the City Council at 5 minutes and 12 seconds. It exceeds NFPA 1710, the 4-minute standard, and it exceeds the ISO 1.5 road mile distance, as we've talked about before. When we look at the southwest quadrant, our highest call volume, 32% of our calls are in the southwest quadrant. We have the most amount of fires there, 22 of them, 2 of which were structure fires. Our most medical calls are in the southwest quadrant. Our longest response times, and it exceeds all the response standards that have been established. So let's talk a little bit about our prevention department. Of course, we get to go out and investigate fires, and that's an interesting line of work. You get to go out and figure out how the fire started. Now, I hate to say this, but if you watch NCIS or CSI and they get things done in an hour, it really takes a little bit longer than that. But this is some evidence that we collected from a fire that we investigated. Here's a Samsung phone that was a cause of a fire. The battery shorted and caused the fire to start. This is a fire up on north end of the island, the triple fatality fire. We went up and investigated the fire and came up with cause and origin. We were also the group that went up and unfortunately had to dig out the bodies and find out where they were located and then come up with cause and origin, which we did. And we were conclusive on where that fire started and how it started. So that's part of what we get to do. This is Captain Bear over at one of the training sessions that we sent him to for fire prevention and code enforcement. So we issued 41 permits last year, which was an 87% increase over 2015, which tells me there's some growth going on in the city or there's some changes going on. We did 20 fire alarm systems, 4 fire sprinkler systems. So there was some change, and that was good to see. We did do 1,282 commercial fire inspections. Now that's all the commercial businesses, apartment complexes. You can see the listing on how we did our inspections, 887 annual inspections. So we did 640 hours doing those inspections, but that took 2,500 man hours to go out and get the inspections for life safety. Now, in just a little bit, you're going to see part of the outcome because of that. So we did investigate 26 fires, and we had a fire loss of $28,000. Historic low for a fire loss, only $28,000 for the entire year. We saved $639,000 in property. How do we come up to that? If we can go out and put a room out instead of a whole house, we look at the amount of stuff that we saved that was still usable. That's very good for the year. There was one year that we had almost a $2 million loss. So when I look at $28,000 for the year, I think that's really darn good. We inspected 901 fire hydrants. We have an agreement with the water department that we inspect them and they fix them. And we do a heck of a good job inspecting them, and they do a great job fixing them. So we did 225 hours to do it, 900 man hours in order to go out and inspect all the hydrants in the city to make sure that they're going to work, that they work appropriately. We get involved with training. This is when we did Cascadia Rising. We brought in one of the helicopters to bring in all the disaster supplies. So you can see that we did 5,430 total personal training hours throughout the year. We offered 1,397 training hours, so our folks spent a lot of time in training so that they're efficient. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm extremely proud of all of our people. They do one heck of a fantastic job. You'll never know if it's a paid person, a volunteer, or paid on call. They just do fabulous work, and I can't be any more proud of them. And I could just go on and boast for a long time, so I'm going to stop here, but they're great. They are just super. In 2016, we had 20 new certifications, and we had 19 recertifications. Why is this important? This plays a role into our Survey and Rating Bureau rating. The certifications that we have, when we get rated, they come up and look at how good of a job we do, what kind of certifications do we have, what criteria have we met, and how did we meet that criteria. So, we're pretty well rounded. Craig says, we train as though we are responding to an emergency involving our own families. And I think that's important to understand. We want to go out and treat people like somebody was treating our family to make sure it's done right, that we are proud of the job that we do, and that we've taken people appropriately, or taken care of them appropriately. So what's our fiscal resources? Our general fund, we take about 10% of the general fund to run the fire department. So in 2016, we had $2 million, which was a 0.045% increase over 2015. So when we look at, we utilized 99.85%. So this last year, we only gave back a little over $3,000. Sorry, Dr. Merriam, it happens. Remember the years I gave you back $250,000? We tried. But as you can tell, you look at our expenditures, and the biggest amount, of course, is our personnel for salary and benefits. When you look at it, $1,600,000 went into personal expenditures between salaries and benefits, and we ran our fire department on $408,000. And this just breaks down by suppression, by administration, by training, and by prevention, what it costs to run that fire department. So when you take a look at it, 65% of our suppression money pays for our 8 full-time career firefighters. 35% goes for paid on call. And we spent about $400,000 for our paid on call, but when you consider that we get 32 to 40 people for that $400,000, it's a pretty good investment and a pretty good return. And again, they do a fantastic job. When we look at all of our other operating expenditures, $408,000 to run the department. We like to think we are cost effective as much as we possibly can be. We try to be frugal where we can be. $408,000. So 16% of our operating budget goes to actually run that fire department for a 12-month period of time. So we stretch our annual operating budget whenever possible. We like to be self-sufficient. We go out and do landscaping. We get to mow the lawns. That's a treat right there. We get to do a lot of our own building maintenance, and we're proud of our building. And I would invite anybody to come in and take a look at that building and tell me that you believe that it's 25 years old. It's been very well taken care of, and our folks have done a good job. We do all of our own janitorial work. Now, of course, these are not staged photos. I just want you to know this is real. And we do our vehicle maintenance. We utilize the city shops, but daily our vehicles get checked to make sure they're operationally ready. We do ladder testing, and that is truly the bow of a ladder when we test it. And so we extend it 35 feet, we put 500 pounds right in the middle of it, and it bows that far. Last year we did fail one. This is supposed to be a non-destructive test, but we actually destroyed a ladder. And I'd much rather destroy it here than we're out on the fire ground when we need it. So it does happen. We tested over 2.5 miles of hose. Now, that's a lot of hose when you think about laying it all out, testing it, and then putting it back on all the apparatus. We do annual pump tests to make sure our pumps are efficient and effective and that they're not failing on us. So where are we headed? In 2016, we did the feasibility study. We moved to our current location, back in 1992. We've grown considerably since then. In 2006, the city contracted with JTS and Associates to determine the strategic direction for the fire department. And even back in 2006, they said, someday you'll need to put a fire station in that southwest quadrant. And from 2006 to last year, we have annexed 216 acres of land into the city limits. So we've got some growth going on. So some key findings. Currently, 24% of our volume is not within the 4-minute 1.5 mile radius requirements. We know we have a gap on the west side. We know the expected growth is going to be in the southwest. We know that additional staffing isn't the only answer at Station 81. There's other things that have to happen, and we've talked about this before. 1 in 4 homes are outside the recommended coverage area. We know that at some point in the future, we're going to have to construct and staff that southwest fire station. At some point, it's got to happen. We've looked at some sites. The Southwest Station will meet the future response needs and standards for the city. Just an idea of a rough drawing that we came up with, what a fire station could look like if we put it over the southwest quadrant. So, do you have any burning questions?
Thanks, Chief. Nice report.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. I hope that you'll take back to your entire department how good we feel, how good you make us feel. Oak Harbor is one of the safest cities in the state. You're a big part of that reason, and we appreciate what you do every day. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
So I'll turn it to the council to see if anybody's got any questions, response, input. Yes, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Obviously, thank you to you and your team. Is this working, Tim? I'm not hearing it, but thank you to you and your team. I'd be curious on the southwest quadrant, we've got a pretty good handle on. There's more calls down there. It's a little further distance. Why the northwest quadrant? What's the sticking point there or the slowdown? Is there a bottleneck as far as the streets, as far as response times?
Just some of the stuff that's so far out. When you look at where Uppsala is, You know, that's quite a distance away. Now, that's part of our mutual aid agreement with North Whidbey Fire and Rescue. So we don't count in their response time in the auto aid. So this is strictly our response time. So there is a joint response area in that section. But some of the cases are, it's just a long distance out there.
Right. Okay. And Angela, impressive presentation as always. That's good work. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Ellenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions here. I noticed on the chart that you had up there, there was a fairly large percentage of your call time that responds to false alarms. How can we reduce the response? How do we reduce the false alarm? That's taking up valuable emergency resources.
Boy, if you and I could come up to an answer with that, we'd do really good. And the only reason I say that is, let's say that in this room, the smoke detector activated for an unknown cause. We respond here, and that's a false alarm. The system did its job. It said, and what could happen is a spider could walk across the smoke detector and set it off. Dust in the air could set that smoke detector off. So that's where we get a lot of the false alarms, is a system activates for no apparent reason. There wasn't a cause that we could find other than dust, a spider, which we've seen happen before. And that's where a lot of those false alarms come in. So the system did its job. It said something was wrong. I'm going to dispatch you because something's wrong. We get there and it turns out to be a false alarm. There wasn't anything definitive.
Okay, you're not wired in on the residential side of it for automatic response like you are with the business, correct?
No, there's houses that, of course, got smoke detectors in them. They're going to call us.
Okay, those are what some of the responses are.
Correct.
So they're not false alarms. They are legitimate calls.
Something happened, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
There was no fire. There was no specific emergency. The smoke detector activated, but there's no reason why it activated. So we put it down as a false alarm.
Okay, that explains that, because I thought, well, maybe people are calling in just to mess with you guys. or
No,
something.
no, that's not it at all.
All right. By the way, really, really good presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I have one more question for
Sure.
you too. Since you have a sharing arrangement with North Whidbey Fire and Rescue, on an interim basis until we get really ramped up for another station, shouldn't we have maybe a mutual agreement where we have peak times, like during the day when you have peak traffic times? That's a big part of your obstacle of getting to a call, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't have a lot of people on the road. Do you think that we should have a different system where we're working with North Whidbey Fire and Rescue so that we have quicker responses during those traffic times, those peak times?
Good question. So now here's a long answer.
Okay.
So we've got the auto aid agreements, which means that there's 14 different areas around the city where we have an auto aid agreement with North Whidbey, which means that as soon as we're dispatched, they're dispatched to the same call. So far, so good. The drawback is predominantly North Whidbey is all volunteer. So their two-man station is Station 22 on Taylor Road or Station 27 out on Monroe Landing Road. So if we have to depend on their volunteers, you average 4 to 5 minutes for them to get from home to the fire station. And they have to amass a crew a minimum of 4 to respond. So there's already a 4-minute delay just getting those people to that station.
I think you misunderstand my question. The question is, would it work if we had a crew at those stations, those locations, shared location, not dependent on their volunteer, but at those locations during peak times, during your peak call times? Your report shows peak call times in here. So shouldn't we have perhaps an agreement with them so that we have people in a location that gets us to the incident more rapidly?
Well, first, we don't have the staff to do that unless we hire back somebody else to fill those positions.
But we don't have staff to do the new
Correct.
station right now either.
Correct, and you're exactly right. So we don't have the staffing to do that. Again, we come back to, if I've only got a 4-person crew on, I keep them in the core of the city to get as far as quickly as possible. When we look at the demographics of North Whidbey, we could look at the Heller Road station to fill that station in, but that's the lowest amount of our calls. That's only 12% of our calls up there. The next closest North Whidbey station would be Zylstra Road, and that is, if you've ever been by the Zylstra Road station, it's a small brick building with 2 little bays, and there's nowhere to sit inside that building.
I understand that one.
And there's no facilities in that building either.
Thank you, Chief. Very good presentation.
Anyone else? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chip Merrill, you have included in your annual report the letters from the citizens of Oak Harbor. Kudos for the excellent job you're doing to making our communities safe. Letters not only responding to fire suppression and medical emergencies, but also engaging and with the citizens of Oak Harbor, even the school for their education about fire. So I would like to add my kudos for your excellent service to keep our community safe.
Good, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Oh, yes, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if you could go into a little more detail for me on page 18. It's the expenditure graph, which is already very detailed, and thank you. Thank you, Angela.
Let's see if we can find the one you're looking for.
It's on, page 18. My question is, you've got amounts on here for things like utilities and repair and maintenance, and a lot of people might not know this, but city departments bill each other for things. Like, you still get a utility bill and have to pay that, so just because it's part of the city doesn't mean all the city things are free. So in terms of something like paying Public Works specifically to maintain your vehicles or repairs or something, is that broken down, or are things like utilities and repair just generalized amounts?
I'm trying to
just
get.
curious to how much money is being transferred within departments within
Right.
cities.
So when we take our apparatus to the city shops for repair, we pay the city shops their rate
Right.
plus a percentage, it's called overhead, in order to have our vehicles repaired at the shops. And that is factored in here, and I'm getting to I think this is the page you're looking at. Whoops. Boy, now how's that for going quick? Oh. Looking at that one right there.
Yes.
So when we do the interfund transfer, there is money in there that we set aside X number of dollars every year for that repair work through the city shops. So all the work that they do, we send an engine up, they do the service work on it, we get the price or the invoice back that shows the price of the parts, the price of their repair, plus whatever the overhead charge is that's charged to all the city departments when our vehicles go to the city shop.
Right, but you don't have a ballpark estimate of what that might be?
Annually? I'm thinking really hard here.
It's a difficult question.
It is, because one year we were about $54,000 for repairs. One year was as low as $38,000. What Sandra Place does is she goes back and she looks at 3 years previous and then determines what we anticipate and project going forward, what our cost is going to be for repairs.
So you can set it aside?
So we put it aside every year for those repairs and hope that we don't have a major catastrophic event that's really expensive, which we've brought to the council on 2 or 3 occasions where we've had a major expense, but we've been pretty fortunate.
Yeah. I wasn't sure what that number would be. That was more than I anticipated. But
Yeah,
I
let's
was
look in the
just
$50,000
curious.
range.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
you're welcome.
Anyone else? Thanks again, Chief.
Thank
Nice
you, Mayor.
job. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, we're on to item number 3, which is our citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. To ensure comments are properly recorded, please state your name clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. So it's time for citizen comment period. Does anybody want to comment? Going once? Twice? Wow, with all these people, I just thought somebody, okay. Third time's a charm. Consent agenda. Before I ask you about the consent agenda, I would like to introduce our appointee to our Planning Commission. I see he's here with us tonight, Francis Bagarella. Welcome tonight, and thank you for agreeing to join our Planning Commission. Okay, we have items number A through I. Does anybody want to? Yes, Councilor Holmberg?
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. I would like to pull 4A for further clarification and also 4F for the same reason.
A and F, okay. Then the other items, anybody want to pull anything else?
Mayor Severance,
Yes,
staff would like to pull item 4E,
4E.
and this would
Okay.
be to move it to the next council meeting.
Oh, okay, so we've got 4A, E, and F have been pulled, and the other items on the consent agenda will be approved as presented then. Okay? So we'll go back to Councilman Allenberg for item number 4A.
I thought I said 4E.
Did you say E?
Yes.
Well, why did I circle
You
A?
said A and
I'm
B.
sorry.
It sounded like an A.
Let me,
Okay, we're just
thought I
gonna,
said A and F. E and F.
E and F. Okay. Okay, E and F. We'll turn back to you for item number 4E.
Well, it's been pulled by staff to move it forward,
So-
so we're not going to have.
Okay, nothing to talk about. Let's go on to 4F.
4F. 4F is professional service agreement of BHC Consultants for the Passaic Sewer overflow structure. And I had some questions with the staff regarding that today. The consent, or excuse me, the agenda item really refers to kind of emphasizing a reason to change this for a art project, the obelisk, the memorial, where in fact I think there's more to that story. And I see that we have our Public Works Director up there. And my questions specifically are, is this truly a Public Works project that would happen whether we located the obelisk on that, a 2,000-pound, as I understand, 2,000-pound art project on top of that? Tell me the difference. Separate it for me, the council, and the public, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This analysis first started because we have a memorial that is being donated to the city. The proposed location was on top of the sewer lift station on Passaic and Pioneer. So we needed to do an analysis of whether or not that the lids over the sewer lift station could support the monument. And so the first contract was for a structural analysis, and that analysis determined that we have some other problems with that lid, so it needs to be replaced regardless of whether or not the monument is placed there. So that's what this amendment is for, is to complete the design for the entire replacement of that lid.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. That answers my question.
Okay? So I guess then it'll be approved as presented. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor
So
Surveyor.
do we need, I couldn't recall if you had, we originally pulled 4A. Do we need to go back and approve that as well?
Pulled
Yes.
4A by mistake.
Right, just want to make sure it was approved.
We can, do we need a formal approval? Okay.
I move to approve 4A as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, Servadius and Mayor Pro Tem to approve item number 4A. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think everything else is approved as presented. Okay. Mayor comments. We are on to section number 5. I'd like to first off welcome a couple of friends of mine. We have a firefighter here that's retired from California, Bob Greathead, and his son Bobby. They're good friends, and they helped me move these last couple of weeks into a new residence, so I invited them to a council meeting in payment. Thank you, you guys. Great friends, by the way. Miss Oak Harbor, Pageant Wise, Inc. recently held the 2017 Miss Oak Harbor Scholarship Pageant. Their overall mission is to provide scholarships for young women interested in the advancement of their education through the spirit of a competition that embodies the 4 points of the crown: scholarship, service, success, and style. With the love and support of our community, they delivered over $14,000 in scholarships and awards. I heard it was a wonderful evening, and I'm sorry I was not able to attend. But with us tonight, I'd like to announce that we have royalty amongst us. And I would ask that when I announce your name and your title, would you please stand up? We have Elizabeth Fitzgerald, Miss Oak Harbor First Princess. We have Gracie Heightshoe, Teen Miss Second Princess, and Allie McLeod, Teen Miss Oak Harbor. Welcome and congratulations. Congratulations to all of the contestants and the scholarship recipients. And I see Mrs. Wise in the back of the room there, kind of hiding, but she's making that production bigger and better every year. Congratulations, and a job well done. Thank you. I'd also like to congratulate Tony Pop. Tony's the Assistant Public Affairs Officer of NAS Whidbey Island, who's announced he is retiring next month after 43 years of federal service, with 17 of those as the Naval Air Station Whidbey Island Chamber Liaison. I want to thank Tony for his commitment to our community, and I congratulate you on your retirement. I wish he was here to congratulate him personally. Tony's a great guy. National League of Cities Conference. Councilor Almberg, Councilor Wassinger, and Councilor Munns returned with myself recently from a very successful trip to Washington, D.C. And I can tell you that not only is it a wonderful conference that we're able to go to with a lot of educational opportunity, we take that opportunity to visit with our congressmen. We also take that opportunity to visit with our 2 state senators. They make time to meet with us. In this particular case, they set up some 3 or 4 special outside meetings. I and some of the council met with the Office of Economic Adjustment to talk to them about our Navy base. And then all of us were able to go to the Pentagon and spend most of a day visiting with the people that are very responsible for this base and for what they do. And it's a pretty intense week. I think this year was the most interesting that I've had. I've been back there a few years before this. This was probably my most intense as far as meetings went. A couple days of snow added to the obstacles, but it was an interesting time, and I think a very successful time, and I would welcome any input you that went along might have, but I want to thank for the opportunity, and I think the citizens are getting something out of this more so every year. So finally, I want to say the St. Patrick's Day Parade, I was sorry to miss that this year. I was still in Washington, D.C., but I wanted to take the opportunity to thank the Irish Wildlife Society for their organization's efforts of this event and celebrating its 44th year. I am a card-carrying member of the Irish Wildlife Society. This parade had a record-breaking amount of parade registrants with 51 entries total. I understand they got to put up with a little bit of rainfall. But that didn't hold them back. Lance Gibbon, Dr. Gibbon, Oak Harbor School District Superintendent, was a parade grand marshal. He made quite an impression in his green clover suit. from head to toe. I saw a picture of that. Thank you to all who participated in making this parade such a big success, even in pouring rain. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to turn to the council. Anybody have anything? Yes, Councilor Munns.
I'll just add for the NLC conference, Washington State had 31 cities represented there. There were 2,500 delegates to this. And this is where you get an eye view of all different kinds of cities, some larger and smaller than us, and what common problems or situations you're dealing with. And sometimes it's nice, we get blinders on here, and we think this is just awful. And then sometimes you hear something else and you go, oh my gosh, am I so grateful it's not us. And so it just kind of puts things in perspective. I was very proud that our city was asked to join in to meet with Congressman Mike Kaufman from Colorado, who heads up 2 armed services committees. And because we live in a city so closely related to the military base, we were asked to go to talk, what is it like to have military personnel living in our communities, but also with a large base, and what it was like. And I thought we did a marvelous job and put our point across about what's really great and what we wish we could change. And so it was quite an opportunity and an honor to go to another state to say, hey, this is something we like and we support it. So thank you very much for the opportunity of letting us go.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While the mayor and our other colleagues in the city council were in Washington, D.C., doing city business, some of us participated in the parade. We had a lot of fun, stormy weather, raining, a lot of wind-blown umbrellas, but we had fun.
Great. Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
I too would like to thank the City of Oak Harbor for sending us to Washington, D.C. This was my first trip there. And I too found it that several meetings we attended jointly with the school district with Dr. Gibbon. And I think that that really made an impression that our city staff and our school district and the Navy, you know, when we spoke about the Navy, that we all work together really well. And I think when Mayor Severin said, yes, I actually meet, I know what's going on, we all are in this together, we work in the city together, our partnerships are strong. I think that that made a real impression on our congressmen, on our senators, and their staff who we were meeting with, to be able to say that. And I learned so much, about our relationships with the federal government and with the Navy and the Pentagon. So I just thank you very much, and it was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Lumber.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to second Ms. Wassinger's comments there too, and also compliment her in that she was our new representative back there, and she asked questions that surprised even some of the Navy people. When we were in that one conference, they looked at her and said, where'd you come up with that information? And she was engaged every day, not surprising, but impressive. And I also want to thank Nicole Tesh for putting the package together. The whole thing was seamless. It flowed like, seems like she's been there before, but all of the meetings were set up that way, and particularly she prepared a position paper regarding our stormwater management LID issues that we have to deal with, and we were able to get that paper into the hands of Maria Cantwell's office with further follow-up coming. So thank you, Nicole. The job well done.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Heiser.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, a couple things. Make an announcement that there will be a community conversation held Tuesday, April 18th, 6:30 at the Oak Harbor Public Library. It's a Narcan night, and it's an opportunity for Oak Harbor to learn about the local impacts of the opioid epidemic and learn what we can do as a community to help prevent and or stem that. So lots of really, really good information happening. They held one on South Whidbey, and the venue they got was standing room only, which surprised them. And so they're not sure how many to expect next month, they've reserved the library room, which I think is 78 total people. So we'll see. And if we're full, then we'll do another one. That is a council meeting night, so I will be absent. I will be at the library, so I just want to throw that out there. It is an important conversation, so I shot Dr. Merriman an email about the possibility of maybe rescheduling a council meeting, but I realize that that affects tons and tons and tons of people when that happens. So I'm not sure how that will resolve itself or what's coming down the pipeline, but I wanted to let the public be aware that that was happening and wanted to let you guys know that I was not going to be here on the 18th.
Okay, duly noted. Anyone else? Okay, we will go to the item number 5C, the city administrator report. Dr. Merriman? I didn't forget you this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Just give a moment here for people to make changes. I have the city administrator's comments at your places there, and I'll go ahead and just submit that report. A couple of items to point out under people number 2. We have 2 new positions that are being filled. First, the Senior Center Program Coordinator. We have hired Liz Lange, who started, I believe, Monday of this week. So she got her offer on Friday, and she wanted to come right here and get to it. And so today she conquered the copier. So I told her, you're in. If you get past that piece, that monster back there, you're doing really well. So we will bring these 2 individuals forward at your workshop tomorrow for introductions. The second one is Phil Matthews, who's been a previous city employee, but he's accepting a promotion for the wastewater treatment plant supervisor position, and that started on March 1st. Down in the money section, we do have a meeting tomorrow with Department of Ecology. If you remember, we issued a little over $25 million in revenue bonds for the treatment plant. I think the weighted average interest rate on those bonds is about 3.4%. We're going to have conversations with Ecology tomorrow to talk about a possible refinance of those bonds. They're offering money through their SRF program at about it was either 1.4 or 1.2%. So we're going to see what possibilities there are if we can refinance that. If we do it 20 years for 20 years, just a straight refinance like that, that would be over $20 million in interest savings if we can do that. So we're going to give that a good discussion with Ecology tomorrow. 2 legislative bills we're tracking right now. One is the Marina Tidelands lease. And Senator Bailey has been working on that very hard this week, talking with some of the other legislative staff down there. The direction it appears to be going is that we have a couple of years left on that lease. So there is some talk about deferring that until the next budget discussion. And that was new as of just Friday, I believe it was. So we haven't heard back yet on where that is proceeding, but that could be a potential where that bill might go. So the other one that we're watching, or have been now, is the lodging tax amendments. And this was going to restrict lodging taxes to only those users who came from 50 miles more away. I checked today on the bill tracker site with the legislature, and it's been placed in what they call the Senate Rules X file, which means it's dead. So they don't have they're not given the authorization for that bill to move forward. So that one we can take off our list. Down in land and projects, item number 2. If you looked at the spam we've been getting the last few days, you'd think we had a new city department called Russian mail order brides, but we really don't. And just so everybody knows, we do have the new spam application in place. It took a little bit longer as it's a different methodology. Before it was just a subscription, they cleared it. We're looking at more of a cloud-based spam filter, so it takes a little bit more time to get that set up. It should be in place now, but there could be some residual Russian mail order brides coming in till probably Monday of next week. If you still see things coming in, it doesn't start clearing up, please send Patricia an email and let her know. We can follow up on that and make sure that's getting cleared. I have 2 other individuals here to do presentations tonight. The first will be Jared. He is here representing our contract with the Orswell Events for the Whidbey Island Marathon.
Hello, my name's Jared Loringer. As Dr. Merriman said, I'm with Orswell Events, the company that's producing the marathon this year. I'm sure Jeff has given you some of these stats that I'm about to give you again from last city council, but we're on pace for a great year, over 2,000 participants, actually. I think the next slide that I do myself, it looks like, there we go, shows a little bit where we're tracking comparatively last year. It's also on that land projects piece of paper that Dr. Merriman had. Basically, this is just a breakdown of where we were final. In 2016, we were at about 1,590 participants. I think right there it says 1,516, but that didn't include people who signed up on race weekend itself. So 1,590 participants in 2016. To date, we're at 1,528 participants. That breakdown just shows you which categories are actually now ahead of where we were last year. So we're anticipating somewhere around the 2,000 to 2,100 participants coming to participate in the Whidbey Island Marathon this year, which is about 600 people up from last year and is tracking more towards about 3 to 4 years ago when there were record numbers here on the island. So we're looking good. We're excited. We're going to have more half marathon participants than we have had in many, many years, I think, and I'm hoping part of that's due to the new course that is very scenic, out on Scenic Heights, actually, out and back there. So some quick stats for the race year to date right now. And then this just shows you a little bit what we have planned for this year. Event festivities. This talks a little more about what's going on down at Bayshore Drive Park there, right by Flintstone Park. So we'll have live music in this year. One very new thing, we have had a beer garden the past few years. This year we're actually going to have Penn Cove Brewing as our brewery that's there. They're going to actually host the beer garden through their catering license, and they're going to feature a few live on-island bands that are actually from the area to play for the finishers. So anybody who's either finishing the race or families that are there hanging out, waiting for their loved ones to get back. New this year as well, we're working on a partnership right now with the Whidbey Rocks folks to actually come and do a kids area for us where they're going to come, teach kids how to do the painting and the different things with the rocks, but we're also working on changing our finish line awards. So each person who takes top 3 in the age group gets an award. We're working with Whidbey Rocks actually to create a very unique on-island experience for each person who either comes from where I'm at in Seattle or from Coopville or anywhere. And if I take top 3, I get a Whidbey Rock actually as my age group award that's special for each one of those awards. So something unique and different that you don't see versus another plaque for the same people who maybe have won somewhere in the past as well. So it'll be neat, we think. We're also going to work on cheer station signs with those kids and do fun things for you as a family member to bring your family to the event if you're waiting for a loved one or just wanted to come see what's going on actually downtown. And then we're also bringing food trucks in as well to be some of the food there. So we'll have 2 to 3 different food trucks as well. Event partnerships, I just wanted to take the time to thank some of the people that are actually helping us to make this route unique, one of a kind, and actually very safe. So some of the route partners are Washington State DOT. We have the State Park Services. We have Island County. We have Island County Sheriff, as well as Oak Harbor Public Works, Oak Harbor Police, Fire, and then the safety element, which is actually my number one goal and concern when producing a marathon, half marathon, is making sure those people don't not only start the race but come back safe. So working with Red Cross, we're working with Oak Harbor Fire, ham radio operators, Whidbey Health to provide and have secure ambulances, everybody on course to make sure those people who do start the race and look to do something that is their lifelong goal, to make sure we help them achieve that and get back to the finish line. I think some of the participant promotions we're working on right now, which is what you get as doing this race, being a participant. So each person receives an event shirt. The one that's shown there is actually going to be for the 5Ks and 10K participants. It's a tech shirt. If you go up in race distance, you get a nicer quality shirt. You'll get a long sleeve shirt for the half marathon. And then our full marathon participants actually will receive a nice long sleeve running hoodie. So you can run all weather gear basically to participate in. The medal you see up there will actually be different as well for each participant. That charm in the middle will actually signify what distance you did. So everybody gets a medal, but it's a neat, unique thing that shows a little bit of difference of what you did. If you did the marathon, it's 26.2, 13.1, 10K or 5K, all the way down. And then we'll have unique kids awards as well. So those are some of the cool things. One of the last things that I know Jeff talked about last time is we can always use more volunteers. We're tracking really well right now, actually, with about over 60% full on our volunteer recruitment, but there's still needs all the way along for group participation at water stations, for families, for high school students, for finish line volunteers. So we can always use those volunteers more and more, and if we hit our goal numbers, we won't turn anybody away. Like I said, it's a very community event, and we want you to either come participate in the race or help us with the race by volunteering. And these are some of the things I just talked about. This just shows you how you can participate. Anybody who is interested, please go to runwhidbey.com. You'll see buttons there to either register for one of the distance, and we can actually help teach you how to train for that distance. If you feel you can't do a 5K, if you feel you can't do a half marathon, we'll help you get there. We have pace teams involved. We have different people to help get you from the start line to the finish line. But everybody in this room, if you can't run, don't want to run, we'd love to have you as a volunteer. We'd love to have you at the event to see how well it's supported, how many people come from not only on island to from off island as well, and just participate in it. It's a lot of fun, and I know everybody in the room that's been there before has a great time, and I think we'll probably be coming back in this year. So thank you for having us participate in the event. We're excited to be here again and excited to see it grow and continuing to be bigger and better than years past, hopefully. So thank you. And if council has any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Jared.
Yep.
How about council? Any questions? Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
I didn't see anything in the presentation about the day before Expo, packet pickup, whatnot. Do you have anything, big plans for that? Or
the main big plan actually is we're changing from where it was in the past, either at the Elks Lodge or at the Best Western from a smaller space. We're going back to Oak Harbor High School. We're bringing in more booths, running booths, health booths, different things along those lines. I actually just met with Whidbey Fire today, and they want to come in with Whidbey Health and do some safety and training exercises for people who want to learn either CPR or different pieces along the safety side of things. So I think we'll have some neat things. We, of course, need volunteers there as well. So it should be bigger than it has been in years past, with more booths and hopefully more things to engage in for people, not only doing the race, but just the general public as well.
Yes, Councilor Servatius.
Thank you. I know one place that gets tasked a lot for volunteers or asked is obviously the Navy and our partnership there. I don't know if you've reached out to them. The other group that stands up a lot is the junior ROTC at the high school. So I can get you their contact info. Or
I would love it. We're working with the high school a little bit, and she's the administrator there is pushing us towards some of the high school groups as well. But we are always looking for more of the military base participation. We had some last year, and we're reaching out to them again, but the more the merrier.
Just one I'm familiar with because of my son, but I'm sure there's lots of clubs or organizations up there. So reach out to me through Dr. Merriman or somehow just shoot me an email, and I can get you the contacts there for them.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Anyone else? I've actually got a couple of thoughts on volunteers too, so I'll pass it along through staff to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
One question I had, I noticed that in years past we actually had some corporate sponsors. Are you working that area? I mean, if we've got somebody listening tonight that might be interested in a sponsorship.
We are, yeah. And if there are people listening tonight, for sure, then if they go to the website, you'll see support volunteer. If they go there, they can click a link that gets them to an email address, which goes directly to me. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who'd like to sponsor. I know we are actually, from a city standpoint, working with Nicole as well as myself and a few other people, reaching out to corporate sponsors. And there's a lot of ways to be involved that we're happy to make specific packages that meet those organizations' goals.
Okay, thanks, Jared.
Yep.
Oh, Councilor Heisen.
Super quick comment. I don't want to speak too soon, but I have a feeling hiring you guys might be one of the best decisions we've ever made. So
Thank you. Well,
confirmation to come, I hope. But this is fantastic so far. So
in a
thank
month
you.
and a half, I hope you say the same thing.
I hope so
thank
too.
you.
I suspect I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Back to Dr. Merriman.
Okay, next one up is Brett with an update on our wastewater treatment plant.
Well, good evening. It's our project update for the clean water facility. Last week we had sort of a milestone. This is one of our wall pours. There were about 30 of those in this one, but this is actually the final wall pour for GMP number 7. So it is a milestone for us. This was estimated to be completed at the end of May, and we actually completed at the end of March. So we pulled some time on that one, and hopefully if GMP number 8 and number 10 goes well, we had a schedule. But I ran out to take a picture of this one, and you see that big pipe in there? That's a sewage pipe coming from our headworks. So we're starting to see pipe work start to happen. Recent activities, design work. We continue to work on the 30% windjammer plans. We will present some version of that tomorrow at the workshop, and with the final plans due at the end of this month. We can kind of bring some more on that. We are continuing to work on the SCADA software development. Probably later this summer, we'll probably show you some examples of that. It's kind of interesting, computer games. Construction, as I said, we're continuing placing work, concrete work on GMPs number 7 and 8. I'll have to take 7 off here pretty soon. Our self-performed work does remain ahead of schedule and below labor estimates. We're starting to pick up again, so I'm excited about that. As I said, we did complete GMP number 7. And activities on GMP number 9 and number 11 are really starting to pick up. The mechanical, electrical, and structural, we'll start seeing bricks here pretty soon. We did, if you remember back at GMP number 11, we had allowances for stuff that we didn't get bids on the first time. We did rebid 2 packages, fire protection and the wood framing. Fire protection is, we're looking like we're going to get some bidders this time, so we've got 2 or 3 people interested in it. Unfortunately, wood framing, we've been dragging the grounds for that one. We can't get anybody local to respond to it right now. The markets were busy, so we're probably going to have to go to a self-perform package on that one. But we have tried that again. Starting April 1st, the Wells Fargo parking lot is going to close. That's mostly to accommodate GMP number 10, our odor control structures and some utility relocations. That will be closed for probably indefinitely. At least through the project. It will probably have pedestrian traffic back here pretty soon. But that's going to cause some congestion around Windjammer Park and the ball fields. People have been used to parking there, and it's not going to be available anymore. So just want to give out warning. Our public access to our construction office is going to be now from Pioneer Road, because that main entrance we've been using is going to close at least for a couple months. We'll probably reopen it again, or at least you can get into it from the street. But if you want to come visit us, you'll have to come in through Pioneer. There will be a doorbell to summon people into it.
Hey,
Funny, nothing.
Brett,
Yes.
just to be clear, Wells Fargo still has parking around
Right,
their
Felco-
business.
This is,
Yeah.
I would consider the parking lot we purchased.
We purchased from Wells Fargo, yeah.
Yes, that's
Okay.
good clarification. It's the city parking lot. Nothing new on the funding, like Dr. Merriman said, we will be talking to DOE tomorrow. They're going to come pay us a visit and go through our paperwork. We are pursuing Windjammer Park funding opportunities, and we've started a preliminary list of that. I think we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow at the workshop. Major updates, the 21st, of course, we're doing GMP later in this meeting, GMP number 12, and the workshop. And I think we'll be actually presenting a decision in April about if we want to accept the 30% design. We haven't scheduled that yet. Schedule, nothing's really changed here. We're chugging right along, hopefully to move it up faster. Of course, our public outreach, you can reach us at our website at oakharborcleanwater.org. You can call our line at 914-7000 or our extensions. Email us at treatmentplant@oakharbor.org. And our next drop-in is April 10th. Any questions?
Council questions? Yes, Councilor Muntz.
On the parking lot closure, I don't know how much that might impact the Little League fields, but a word to them just on what you're closing off, just to forewarn them.
Yeah, we tried to warn the Parks Department has a league meeting every year, and I think it was a week and a half ago. We tried to warn them. But we weren't able to get a hold of one of the leagues. I think Ms. Washington knows them, so that's why I did want to make sure we get through.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor
Yes, I will make sure that they got the word, and
Yeah.
I think we have a meeting tomorrow night. Yep, season is getting started now. Kids are out there practicing.
Oh, yeah,
They're probably done now. It's getting dark, but the parents always seem to find a place to park, and
Yeah,
but we'll make sure that everybody knows what's going on. Thank you for the update.
Yes, Councilor Olberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Brett, do we have the cross-sectional width of Dock Street to be able to put in perpendicular parking on the Little League side of that street and still maintain two-way
you
traffic?
talking Dock or City Beach?
City Beach, excuse me. Not Dock, yeah.
We do have parking along, you can park at least along one side of it. The one side we have the fence out may be limited, but
Well,
yeah.
the parking that's in there now runs parallel to the curb line
Mm-hmm.
of that. If we change that to perpendicular to the curb line, do you have the width of that street to be able to increase the capacity?
Are you
the
talking
parking?
diagonal?
No,
Perpendicular,
just go straight in.
yeah, just go straight in and you'll still be able to park along the side. Yeah, I mean, we've always had alongside parking. We moved the fence out for a period of time there, so we do
Yeah,
have.
I'm not making
yeah.
myself clear, obviously. Parallel parking runs parallel to the curb line, even
Right.
there isn't a curb line there. Can we go perpendicular to the curb line so that you can increase the volume of parking?
Yeah.
Do we have the width of the street to maintain two-way
Yeah.
traffic if you go
Yeah,
perpendicular
that's
to the
what
curb line?
That's what I call diagonal, and no, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah. The width-wise wouldn't work, because we have to have a certain amount of width in there.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brett, on the cost and funding status on the GMPs, the project is now up to GMP 11.
Yes.
And the cost that I figured out is up to 107 million. We have in our agenda item number 12, another GMP. Is that GMP 12? Would that be included there in that cost?
Yeah.
And that will be the last one?
We have one more GMP after that one scheduled for the site mitigation and final site work there for that,
So
so.
12 and 13 will
13
be the
next
last
one.
one. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, nice report, Brett, good job. Okay, we are moving on to, I assume we are, Dr. Merriman? Okay. We're moving on to section number 6, public hearings and meetings. We have one ordinance, we have a couple of contracts or agreements, and we have an annual report in item number 10. So we have 4 more items to discuss. And after each item, I'll give the public a chance to speak about the item if you'd like. To speak during a public hearing or meeting, please sign in, but it's not completely necessary. But to ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name clearly into the microphone and limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. So we are on to item number 6A, and it looks like we've got a senior planner, Dennis Lefevre, coming to discuss ordinance number 1795, Valley High Investments Annexation.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dennis Lefevre, Senior Planner. Tonight's presentation is the public hearing for the Valley High Investments Annexation. It is a 4-parcel proposed annexation which is located on the southwest portion of the city, south of Fort Nugent Road, directly across from Ferry Point. It encompasses about 16.73 acres of land. This is not the first time you've had an opportunity to look at this. This has been brought to you as part of an intent to commence annexation proceedings back in August of last year. At that meeting, we discussed the geographic scope. We decided on the 4 parcels of land. We also selected the R1 zoning, which was compatible with adjacent zoning at that time. We also required the proportionate share of city indebtedness, which is a typical procedure for annexation. And then you also authorized the applicant to circulate petitions for the 4 properties and get signatures from the owners to see if we can move forward with this annexation. We also discussed at that time a number of policies that are encompassed in our comprehensive plan. Specifically in the urban growth area element, we have a variety of policies that address annexations under Goal 4. We also, under Goal 5, have a series of policies, and we just, through the course of analysis of this annexation, they will serve to implement those policies, whether they do now or they will in the future. I think of note that we should keep in mind the second policy here calls out to avoid the creation of unincorporated enclaves. That means we don't really want to annex property and leave a hole in the middle of that annexation. That's important to remember for this annexation process tonight. The applicant did proceed with the circulation of the petition, entertained discussions with all 4 property owners within that proposed geographic scope, did get signatures for 3 other properties. Those are identified in the pink crosshatch. Did have a conversation with the middle property owner, who is not a participant in this annexation at this point in time. The next step for this process after the submittal of the petition was to submit the petitions, the signed petitions of the 3 property owners to the Island County Assessor. We needed to determine whether those 3 properties represented 60% or greater of the assessed value of all 4 properties. The Island County Assessor confirmed that that did represent 60% or more of the 4 properties. So we are moving forward to have the public hearing this evening. Your options are to accept the annexation as proposed with the 4 properties. Incidentally, that's how the ordinance that's part of your packet is written, is for the 4 properties. You may also accept any portion of the scope of annexation, but you may not increase it tonight. The other option, of course, is to deny the annexation altogether. Staff's recommendation is to move forward and approve Ordinance 1795, annexing all 4 properties, totaling 16.73 acres. Considering the determination of sufficiency by the Island County Assessor and consistent with our policies in our comprehensive plan, It's a logical annexation for the city. If you do move to approve ordinance 1795, the next steps for us would be to prepare the special census and send that package off to the Office of Financial Management for their review and certification, and that process takes about 2 months. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, but be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, before we do that here at the council, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If anybody would like to come forward, please state your name into the microphone, please, and try to limit it to 3 minutes, please.
My name is Bruce Brown. I'm part of the owner of the middle property that everybody wants to annex in, whether I want it or not. First of all, you're limited on your number of resources out there. I may see a city cop once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks out there. I may see a sheriff out there once every month. We're far enough out to where the fire department is going to take more than 5 minutes to get there, because that's already been proven when I had a fire in my field and they had to send the city out there. It took them 7.5 minutes to get there, and I'm out there with a fire hose trying to put out an electrical fire. Their property lines are kind of not set out there. Whoever owned the property before that was Mr. Ed Brown. I have walked the properties. I have found barbed wire strung through there. So I've tried to find out where my property lines are by walking through there, and I've run into wire that just kind of goes whatever way they've wanted. There are, on the back side, there is no access to the back 5 acres because Country Lane is a private lane, and there's no way for them to get heavy equipment in there. Now, accordingly, there is a 30-foot easement, supposedly, that nobody's been able to find. I've gone back to the records of 1969, and it's supposed to start at Fort Nugent to go to that back 5 properties, which belong to Mr. Lynn. Nobody's been able to say yay or nay on this, whether it exists or not. The only other thing is that one section of property back there used to belong to Masonic Lodge that butts up to Mr. Lynn's, about 30, 40 feet wide in that one corner. So I don't know how they're going to make that work back in there. Also, when Mr. Landry Gentry went in and put his housing project in, he kind of screwed up the watershed. There's more water retention now out there than there was before. So if they go in to build in there again, how much of this is going to screw up the watershed that's out there and force more of the water back onto my property, because I have more water retention on my property now than I did before Landry Gentry came in. The people went out there to put in these fiber optic cables. They hit one side of my piece of property out there. They went down 18 inches. They were already into 4 inches of water. I go down to put a post in 3 feet, and I'm into 2 feet of water on the one side of my drive. It does not drain well, thanks to what they did across the street, and I don't know how it's going to be affected when they go in there to put houses in anymore. I'd like to know how they're going to put 16 houses on 5 acres. I've never seen it done before. I grew up in Texas, where you have at least 40 feet between houses. Out here, they seem to put down 10 feet between houses, and that's enough. So I've been trying to opt out of this. I've talked to the Valley High Investment Company about 2.5 years ago. They were asking me for options. I told them there was a piece of property across the street. The guy had put in water, sewage, gas, and electric. He ran out of money, didn't have enough to finish it, and it was still for sale. As far as I know, the bank still owns it, and it is inside the city limits. So my question to them is, why do they need to go out there and spend more money when they have property across the street that's already got all the stuff they're going to put in anyways? Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
And one other thing is, I don't know how that's going to affect the other people around Country Lane in there. because they butt right up to the back of Mr. Kochwire's property, which is one of the pieces of property you want to bring in.
Okay. Other comments? Anyone else like to comment?
My name's David Oates. I live on one of the properties that's adjacent to this. If this proposal, if this annexation goes in, I will then have the city property along my, what I call my back fence. I read somewhere that my property is 438 feet from the city, and this is going to put it about 100 feet. I just want to say I'm not thrilled with this annexation. I'd rather it did not happen.
Thank you, Mr. Oates. Anyone else? Yes.
My name is John McCoy. I am a neighbor directly to the south of your proposed annexing off of Country Lane. I am also very concerned about the drainage. Having walked all of that property and all 4 pieces of those property at different times during the last year, they're swampy and wet, full of mosquitoes. My pasture south of our house is already full of water 3 or 4 months out of the year. If this 16 acres turns into an asphalt parking lot and roofs, I fear that that pasture will no longer be useful half of the year or more, and there will just be a lot of water that doesn't have any place else to go other than my pasture and those of us that live in that kettle south of this property. I don't think this is a good move for the city. I think it's going to turn into a boondoggle of trying to figure out where that water goes, and grumpy property owners alongside you and one in the middle of the annex. I don't know how to resolve that, but I hope you do before you move forward with the annexation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Anyone else? Public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Rob Dow, and my property is on Boone Road and abuts this annexation. I couldn't possibly be more against it. I do not want the city abutting my property. I really wish you would consider staying on the northern side of the street, because I don't need anybody from the city on the south side of Fort Nugent. I'm afraid the damage there, if I wanted a bunch of houses around me, I would have stayed in the city. I lived on Castilian Drive for 25 and a half years. I moved out to the country on purpose because I don't want to be in the city or abutting the city. So you've ruined that for me if you go ahead with this. So I would respectfully request that you not allow this annexation to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dow. Anyone else? Anyone? Yes.
This annexation doesn't just affect one person.
Could you say
It affects 8 people.
Could you say your name?
I'm sorry, my name's Bill Burgoyne. I live at 1910 Country Lane.
Thanks, Bill.
It doesn't affect just one property owner. It affects 8 total. So my concerns are, I think this has been planned for a long time. This is the first time I've heard about it. I know that the utilities that were set in the road are at elevations that would probably take care of that back area with respect to sewer. As it is now, I remember when all the property to the north of Fort Nugent was just land, and the watershed there is terrible. All that drainage is going into Lowers Pond, the golf course pond there. We've been trying to maintain our ditch that runs from the drive-in all the way to the golf course through Waterloo Acres, and it's been difficult with that. We've tried to clean it out, and with the new housing that's already in across the street of Fort Nugent there, it's very difficult for us on the south end of that to drain our areas. And with this new development, you know, you're talking 3 to 6 homes per acre. I could potentially have, you know, 18 homes in my front yard. So very concerned about that. Again, these property owners moved out there to live in the country. I live on Country Lane. It's a beautiful place. Fort Nugent is becoming a nightmare with traffic already. We've got people speeding up and down that thing like it's a drag, you know. It's terrible. And there's no sidewalks. We've got people coming from the development, the new development, trying to walk their animals and their kids up to the park. There's no sidewalks. There's all kinds of hodgepodge type of construction going on. Very familiar with construction, very familiar with utilities, and you know, I don't think this is a smart move. There's lots of other areas that can be annexed. There's other areas in the city that can be annexed. And for one guy to come in and buy a piece of property and then try and, we know what's going to happen here eventually. This is going to be development. We're going to have houses in there. It's just not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgoyne. Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, my name's Tom Derner. I live on Country Lane as well. We're all neighbors, kind of like our privacy, and my vote's nay too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Derner. Anyone else? Anyone going once, twice? Okay, let's ask Mr. LaFever to come back up, and I'll turn it over to City Council. Yes, Councilor Almberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for legal. In the determination of sufficiency for Valley High investment, the county assessor provided a letter dated October 26, 2016, but there is no reference to any parcel numbers on that. I have trouble connecting her letter to this project.
The connection is the Valley High Investments. Probably moving forward in the future, maybe we should attach Development Services letter to the assessors that indicates this is the name of the annexation, this is what we're calling it, and this is the parcels that it includes, so that we can see the connection.
Yeah, Mr. Almberg, that's probably my mistake by not including that correspondence that we sent initially to the assessor, which had the full legal descriptions, the parcel numbers, a map, the required information that she needed to see to make her determination.
Did you find it rather odd that her letter that gets recorded, in fact, would probably be recorded with this package when it goes, does not refer to the parcel numbers that fall within the application?
I didn't think that was odd because I knew we were expecting a letter from her, so, and that was the only annexation that we were entertaining at the time, so.
And then another question for you. Did the applicant meet all of the other criteria for annexation that any other person would have? For example, the people within the audience who spoke, if they were in the UGA and they petitioned for annexation, they would have a right to annex? Wouldn't that be correct?
That's correct, yes. And we followed the state statutes in our annexation proceedings.
Okay.
And he was in conformance with every step.
Thank you, Mr. LaFever. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have several questions. And let's see if I can follow my line of thinking here. When considering annexing a piece of property, it's in the UGA, we've got our boundary lines. Are things like buildability and water retention issues something that comes into that discussion, or are we just looking at property lines? Are the issues with the actual land the, potential builder's problem? How much does that factor in?
It's kind of a twofold process. We did some initial review as part of our intent to commence annexation proceedings. We sent it to engineering. They did some initial review. However, the meat and potatoes of that review will come upon a development application, which has been formally submitted yet.
Okay, so there's currently no
There is currently no
proposal for an
application
actual
for development.
Okay. That was my understanding, so just wanted to make sure. And, gotta follow have arrows here. So there are adjacent property owners who apparently have not been aware of this process. We had the petition circulated last year among the property owners. So if you could just, for my own benefit, explain how much of a factor neighboring property owners' concerns are taken into consideration. So do I just need to contact the people in the property owners in the particular area, or is the input from any of the adjacent property owners a factor?
Well, that's part of the decision-making process. We did our notification according to state statute and our municipal code. In fact, I think we took it one step further where we notified properties within 300 feet of the outside boundary of the proposed annexation. Obviously, it worked. But as far as making that decision, that's why we're here tonight.
Sure. I understand. Let me clarify my question. I understand notifying for the public hearing. I'm surprised I haven't seen Steve Powers jump up in the background yet. Oh, there he is. Nice. I was saying he's usually hovering when I start to him and ha. It's very sneaky. I understand the notification, but do the adjacent property owners have any input in the actual application process? Maybe that's my question.
Well, again, with the development application process, are you speaking of the annexation?
Annexation. The development's hypothetical
They
at this
can
point.
express concerns.
Sure.
They can express whatever they wish to as far as the infrastructure, the stormwater concerns that were raised tonight, respectfully. It's still a legislative call because of following the steps as they're prescribed to us. We have done that. So we're honoring the applicant's request to review this annexation. And we've gotten to this point.
Okay.
So it's, sure, go ahead.
He's doing good.
So I think this is that opportunity, right? So that's why the annexation is a two-pronged process. The first piece, as you recall from back in August, I think it was whether the council was going to even allow the annexation to go forward or not. And that's just a public meeting. But the public hearing portion, which was this evening, obviously, is intended to provide that opportunity for public input for people both inside of the proposed annexation area and people adjacent to the annexation area. So that this is their opportunity for input into this portion of the process.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Murray. Were you done, Councilor Hazard?
I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this question is for you, Mr. Lefevre, or Steve Powers. So looking at the city boundary map, Fort Nugent is obviously in it. And then there's property on Southwest Rosario that's in it, and that neighborhood. And then the property behind that Rosario, it's abutted by 2 city limits. South of 24th. And it's the back corner of Fort Nugent. So, no, you have to, over one, go over.
It's not actually
on. It's not on
Oh,
there.
it isn't, okay.
It's not on there.
Okay. I'd be
I guess
pointing all
just-
night long.
logically, that seems better because you've got 2 city properties abutting one. I guess they just don't want it developed. But in a sense, you're creating an enclave by skipping where they live and going over to the next. And I guess I'm concerned with the drainage, if they've got drainage problem now. Now, whether or not they could prove, or who could prove, whatever, they've got more water, it's coming from somewhere. So was the other neighborhood not done? And we have to be sensitive, because if it's wetlands, then you can't build on it. And so I'm just, I wasn't here for the August meeting, but it just seems like we're going against our own rule. I know we need housing, but we're skipping one large area that already has some infrastructure there. Homes they don't want to belong, but I mean, it's like we're skipping over. So if someone could answer that question, sort of, maybe?
I think I'll at least initiate the response, but many, many years ago, under the Growth Management Act, we created an urban growth boundary. And that urban growth boundary, I think, is coterminous at this point with Fort Nugent. We can't annex any of those properties to the south of that line. Our urban growth boundary actually came down and, made that configuration. Hence, we can annex those properties into the city. But the urban growth boundary is extremely limiting to what we can and can't do. We basically can't go outside the urban growth boundary.
And I think the other kind of question I think I heard in there, Mrs. Munns, is about who initiates annexation. And it may be helpful for a reminder that the city does not initiate them.
I know.
Right? And so we respond to property owner requests for annexation. And Mr. Lefevre is exactly correct, which is that this area here, which Country Lane and some of the other street names, which escape me at this point, which has this larger lot rural development pattern in it, is outside of the urban growth area, which means that we're precluded by state law from annexing that particular area. So if we had a larger aerial available for view here, you would see that area which is developed with that larger lot rural residential. Then we get over to the Fort Nugent Park area. And you're correct in when you're looking at that aerial, the south of the Ridgeway Drive area, that's the last, what I would say, considered to be sizable area within the urban growth area that is available for development. A large portion of that was annexed in the 2009, 2010 timeframe. There's a portion of it which has not yet been annexed. We have actually a pending development proposal in that area. But again, I think the primary point that I'd like to make is that the city does not initiate those annexations. We respond to those applications as submitted by property owners. The other point that I think that you were making is drainage. We are keenly aware of the drainage issues in this portion of our community. We've worked for quite some time, and we've talked with a lot of the different property owners, many of them in the county, over the last 15 years that I'm aware of, as we look at the drainage pattern in this area. That's a whole 2-hour conversation about the complexities of drainage. I think I can boil it down to each project has to go through a site-specific drainage analysis that looks not only at that property, but looks at the downstream system and the ability for water to be handled by that downstream system. Doesn't mean that there won't be changes in an area, because clearly that happens. But we are required to make sure that the applicant is looking at that as we process any future development application.
Other council questions? Councilor? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those who spoke, most of the concern about the drainage, and at what phase or point of this annexation proceedings will be addressed the storm drain to mitigate the problems of the water in that area?
Typically, what is done is, as Steve mentioned, upon a development application is when we would look at the stormwater and the impacts to the downstream properties, incorporation of the new stormwater regulations that we have, low-impact development, all would be incorporated into the review process for a development application.
Another concern is the property behind those three properties from Fort Nugent. Someone asked about access to that. Do you think it will be addressed, the ingress and egress for that property? And there's a country lane on the other side of that.
A little on this side?
On the side of Country Lane.
Down and through here.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
On the south side.
We would look at that as part of a potential development application, again, as far as ingress and egress and service to any other properties that may want to work with that development. We wouldn't want to preclude any properties to the south from ingress, egress. Steve, do you have any?
I just would say that as part of, as Dennis is correct, as part of that development review process, Mr. Pagal, we couldn't leave those properties which are not presently part of the annexation without access. And so part of our subdivision code, part of just good plain planning and engineering is to make sure that whatever street pattern is resulting inside of the development boundary, should the annexation be approved, has to stub to that property to the south, so that those properties, should they annex at some point in the future, have access to a public street so that they have access. In other words, we just can't leave them landlocked. And if I could go back to one of your first questions about at what point in the process is the storm drainage looked, again, Dennis was absolutely correct. It's examined as part of the development application. And I think it's important to know that that process itself has its own notification to the surrounding property owners. There would be a notice, initial notice would take place when there's an application submitted. So assuming annexation is approved, we get an application at some point in the future for a new subdivision. Notice goes out to surrounding property owners within 300 feet of that boundary. There'd also be notice when we would have completed our environmental review of that property. And both of those invite comment from interested parties. Then there would be additional notice at the time that a hearing might be held before the Planning Commission. Again, another opportunity in which we would invite comment from the neighbors. And so there will be opportunity to make specific comment about specific concerns on a proposed project, provided on at least 3 different occasions in the future.
So this agenda item, if it proceeds, it will go to a Planning Commission.
Only once we have an application. Again, keep in mind, please, that this step is solely about annexation. Yes, no, is it in the city limits? If the answer is no, we're done, the applicant is done, there's no appeal of that decision from the council. If the answer is yes, then there likely is a development application submitted at some point in the future. We would have no way of knowing when that might be, but if it occurs, then we are required by our own code and by state law to initiate a series of notifications to the public at large, as well as to adjoining property owners, so that they are aware of what is being proposed in their neighborhood and are provided an opportunity to submit comments, be they oral or written comments.
One more question. I don't know if this is related to this annexation process at this time. The extension of city services, water and what's the other one?
Sewer.
Sewer.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot the new sewer. Water and sewer. Most likely will be extended from the north, which is the closest one. But if it is extended from the east, that's going to be a long line and might involve latecomers agreement. It could be obligated to the proponents.
Mr. Pagal, my recollection tells me we already have water and sewer in Fort Nugent. Certainly, I believe water is in Fort Nugent because it serves the Fairway Point neighborhood to the north. I don't recall where the sewer manholes may be in that particular area. But in general, yes, if services needed to be extended and if those services would serve more than the property that would be part of a development application, it is potentially available for a latecomers agreement to come before the council. That's sort of a general answer to that. Again, my recollection is I believe those services already exist, in which case the owner may actually be required to pay a latecomers fee.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Powers.
You're welcome.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. Shout out to Craig Taylor. I'm sure he's not home watching, but Craig, you provided me with some great maps, which Ms. Munns and I are sitting here looking at. East property, west property, and south property. I'm going to call it center property. Mr. Brown, I think, did not want to be included. Are there any houses on those properties right now? East, west, and south is what I'm going to call them?
On my, sir?
So,
Well,
if staff, please.
it's council's meeting, so how do you feel?
The properties to the east, west, and south are
So the
currently
par-
vacant.
So all the petition signers, those lots are currently vacant?
Yes.
No, sir.
And
There is a building on the west property.
Okay, thank you. Can you come back? I think you had one up there with more of a satellite imagery.
oops.
There's a couple just to the east. I'm assuming the first squiggly line we see is that Country Lane coming down, not inside the UGA, but just outside, right there. That's Country Lane. Moving farther to the east, there's a kind of parallel squiggly line. What is that section down through there? Is there a green belt through there?
Drainage ditch currently.
Okay. And then that tail ends further down, I guess. You can't really see it on there, but that's, and I'm familiar with, I think it was Mr. Oat maybe, or further down. Someone spoke about the pasture. I've got some friends that live on Wellington, and I've seen that body of water. My concern, I appreciate when you buy a piece of property, you think it's going to be that way forever, and you may be in the county forever. When was this UGA line established? I know we talked about that, and it's kind of odd that it drops down, as Ms. Munns was commenting on.
This boundary was established with the first GMA comprehensive plan in 1995.
So there has been the possibility since that time that with a majority or supermajority of the property owners value that this could be annexed into the city.
Yes.
And while if you've purchased that property, a 5-acre parcel or something thereabouts, that's not what you intend or probably what you wanted, but some people obviously want that. So it's difficult when change occurs, especially if you're not on the side of change. My concern would be the water retention runoff. I'm familiar with, like I said, I've got friends on Wellington Loop that I look out across that pasture and I've seen how wet that can get. So I would need some very firm convincing that we will do, if this gets developed, and it could be 3 years, it could be 10 years from now, whenever the property owners would move forward, that there's something that's going to be done to mitigate that water so it's not pushed further to the south.
Well, Mr. Servadius, we're required, engineering and development services are required as part of the review process to look at that drainage system, both on the property itself, as well as where does that water go when it leaves the property. And that's been true for as long as I've been in this business. This is a complex drainage area, and I don't want to, sort of dive down a rabbit hole, but it's been a very complex drainage area for a very long time. It has its own drainage basin study. It is a very complex area in the fact that there's a large contributing area from the county, which actually has far more land area that contributes water to this basin than what is in this city. So we have water that originates in the county, passes through the city, and passes out to the county. Suffice to say, there are a lot of variables here. Staff is very well aware of those variables. We've been working with them for a very long time. I think now what we see, as council's very well attuned, is that in addition to the regular stormwater regulations that we now have a mandate to keep as much of that water on the property itself due to the Department of Ecology's 2012 Stormwater Manual. And so that adds an additional layer of complexity to the review process, but perhaps there's some small glimmer of a silver lining in that we're now required to have the developer focus their energies, if feasible, to put that water, keep that water on site rather than releasing it downstream. And you're well aware of the things that we have to do in order to go about that process. It's about pervious pavement. It's about reducing the amount of area which is hardscape. It's about keeping as much natural vegetation as we can. It's about treating the soils so that they are more absorbent. It's about not disturbing things during construction process. You've heard us use this phrase, it's a game changer, that those new rules will be applied in this location.
My concern there would be, and I appreciate, I know Mr. Brown shaking his head, I might answer what you're thinking. The groundwater, the water table concerns that we heard from, I don't think keeping it on site is necessarily the answer in this case. It's probably transporting it, this is just my 2 cents, it's transporting it somewhere else rather than trying to just drive it down. But I understand there's the state statutes with the LID requirements we're looking at.
What I didn't go into in terms of brevity, but I will, is as council again is well aware, it's a whole list of things that we're required to run the developer through. It starts with the idea that we're going to keep as much water on site as possible. Should that prove to be infeasible, we have a whole series of things that we have to work our way down to. Again, challenging circumstances because we can't hold these property owners responsible for the groundwater level in the immediate area. They didn't contribute to that beyond what is happening right now on that particular piece of property. So it's a highly complex, highly technical series of things that we would have to do.
All right, last question then. So legally, I understand if you get the majority of property owners, they have the right to petition for annexation. We start that process. Is there anything then that would halt this process if we decide to allow annexation, is there anything that would halt the process?
Which process are you referring to, sir?
Annexing, the decision tonight is to, well, a portion of or none, to allow the annexation of these properties.
The council is the one that could halt the process.
And so then, I'm sorry, better question, then development of those properties, that would go through all the normal permitting processes?
Yes. Again, it really is a yes/no question for the council this evening. If you believe that annexation is appropriate at this time, you approve the annexation. If you think that it's inappropriate at this time, you deny the annexation. If you deny it, it's done. If you approve it, then all it really means is once, as Dennis said, he has a process yet to complete, takes a couple of months. It then eventually becomes certified by the state, and then it is officially within the city limits. Then, presumably, at some point in the future, there is a development application that comes through. Staff has no idea or no way to tell the council or the public, for that matter, when that might occur. It could be 6 months from now, it could be 6 years from now. When such application comes forward, we then start a brand new process that's, as I've explained before, geared towards reviewing the project against all of the appropriate criteria, making sure that everybody is aware of the project, and conducting yet another public hearing, in this case before the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Last question, Mayor. So then the primary property owner there in the middle, if they're all of a sudden find themselves in the city limits, are they encouraged at some point to utilize city water and sewer? Do they not need to? What is the process for that?
There is no requirement under our present code for a connection to the city water system. There is a requirement with some footnotes and some caveats to connect to the sewer system, but the primary footnote to that is that if you are annexed after a date certain, which has already passed, and you have a functioning septic system, you're not required to connect to the Oak Harbor sanitary sewer until such time as that septic system fails and you're unable to get a new permit to repair it from the county. So even if it fails, there's an opportunity to see if you can continue to keep that going. Only if you can't are you then required to connect to the sanitary sewer, which makes sense from a health and safety perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Wassinger.
Yes. You mentioned the county. So currently these properties are all in Island County. So there, and I know that you can't speak for Island County per se. Is Island County required to follow the same stormwater management requirements that we are?
They are not,
So-
because they are not what's known as a Phase 2 jurisdiction. We're the only jurisdiction in Island County who has that dubious distinction.
And then also, is there anything to say that the property owners, let's say in that if we choose not to annex these properties into the city, that they could develop housing or structures, anything, you know, within the county's jurisdiction? Are they able to go to the county and develop? What is the county regulations for that property?
To the best of my knowledge, it would be one house per 5 acres. Because the county, being rural, has to maintain a rural density. That's Growth Management Act sort of 101. They're not allowed to have urban densities. They're not allowed to provide urban services, and think sewer when I say that, right? And so that is the primary driver why properties are identified, first of all, in an urban growth area, is that there's a presumption that over time they will be annexed into the city and then will be developed at that urban density. But should annexation not take place, the resulting development at the highest density would be one house per 5 acres.
And could you tell us again how many acres are in each of the 4 quadrants?
The 3 northern properties are 3.91 acres. and that-
Total?
No, each one
Each
is
one, okay.
3.91, and the bottom one is 5 acres.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Eisen?
Thank you, Mayor. If I may summarize, so you can let me know if I understand this correctly or not. 90% of the concerns and the information you've provided us so patiently tonight, things like whether or not a parcel is landlocked, drainage, et cetera, those are pertinent to a possible future hypothetical development application and not to the annexation process that
That's
we're doing
correct.
tonight.
That's correct.
Okay, so this entire conversation needs to happen during a different process, hypothetical process, not relevant to
Dennis
tonight.
said this before as well, which is, at the annexation stage, it is appropriate to ask questions as to whether or not we can serve an area.
Sure.
Right? And hopefully, I think that Dennis has answered that question, which is that we have the capacity to serve it with the public utilities.
Right.
How we go about doing that and the details, that's that next stage. But I
Sure.
want to make sure the council understands that it's a perfectly legitimate question to say, hey, is this area too far away for us to serve?
Sure. No, okay, thank you. That helps. It seems like every answer we're getting is, well, if there was a development application, then yeah, that would be relevant. So, but you're right, the questions are good, that's why we do this. So, okay, want to make sure I understood that. Thanks.
Anyone else? Councilor Allenberg?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it boils right down to, Mr. Powers, what you said, that's a yes or no answer. This is about annexation, this is not about development. And since we are in the city a society of laws and ordinances that govern both our expansion of this community and regulate the design and development of the construction, which includes mitigating groundwater and other surface improvements, that's the responsibility of the applicant. I have confidence that we have the ordinance and we have the staff and the regulations in place to mitigate concerns of the people who have testified here today. I'm going to support the annexation of this application.
Anybody else at this point? Any other questions? Any other input? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the subject that I brought out earlier about extending city services, do you provide information to the proponents on when they can hook up to sewer, the city sewer? And will that include water also? Like we have in our municipal code, about hooking up to city sewer. The proponents can continue to use their septic system up to 15 years before they can hook up to city sewer.
I'm not sure what the timeline is, but they have the option, if they choose to hook up to the city utilities, they certainly may do that. But it would be their option unless the instances occurred that Steve mentioned. Failure of a septic system and non-replacement of the system itself.
Right.
That type of situation.
And that includes also picking up garbage that they can retain the services of the Island County disposal up to 7 years.
We negotiate a franchise agreement with Island Disposal. It typically ranges from 7 to 12 years, and the last half a dozen or so have been at the 12-year mark. And so that's just an agreement that we reach with them. So the sanitation service for any of the existing residences in the area, in the annexation area, would stay with Island Disposal until that franchise agreement would expire, and then it would convert to the city garbage service.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, Councilor Munt.
Mr. Fear, I just want to be sure. So this is yes or no on annexation, and the property just sits there until someone decides they want to develop the property, which could be part of it or all of it. It doesn't have to all be developed at once, right?
That's correct.
It could be parcel at a time. And when the development comes, then we have the right to say, no, it's not going there because it doesn't meet certain requirements? Like they can't solve the drainage, they can't, I mean, I don't mind approving annexation with the possibility, but maybe the science isn't there yet to safely guard. When we annexed a portion of Scenic Heights, we didn't realize there was a drainage problem, and the city had to fix it because it's now in the city limits. We know that there is a drainage problem off of this area, but on that area too, probably. And I don't mind annexing something, but if it can't properly be drained and protect other properties around it so they don't lose the value, then I don't want to annex it. I mean, I know you don't have to answer that tonight. It's either annex, yes or no, but when a development comes, I've seen some things, some kooky little things slip through the cracks, and I just hope that we are beyond that to prevent that.
As Mr. Powers responded earlier, we would look at all of those aspects in great detail in conformance with our code upon any development application that comes through. The entire staff, engineering staff, public works, planning, all services would look at a development application, then it also would go through a public review as well.
I think one key point is that the subdivision process has criteria which are dictated by state law. The state has held on to that process very, very closely. We're not allowed to sort of create our own things or drop some things off of their list. And a key part of that is being able for the applicant to demonstrate to the city's satisfaction that the necessary provisions are being made for a wide variety of things. Since this evening's conversation is focused mostly on drainage, that's where I'll focus as well. They have to demonstrate that they are meeting the appropriate drainage requirements and standards. So that's absolutely one of the criteria that have to be met in order for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to you to approve any project. They have to submit to you written findings that says that to the best of their knowledge that's been accomplished. Yet the council still has the opportunity to say, you know what, we have some questions about how this is being done. So yes, there's a very rigorous process in place for us to do that. But I want to be fair about this as well, which is that a single property or a group of 3 or 4 properties, even following all of the appropriate standards and following all of the appropriate rules, can't be required to fix some other drainage problem that is somewhere else. Their obligation is to not add to that problem. It's to make sure that they're not contributing to an existing drainage problem. So to the degree that something exists now as a problem, I want to be really clear that nobody either in the audience or at the council dais is under the impression that this applicant or any applicant is required to fix those existing drainage problems. The exception to that, I believe, is for downstream conveyance. So if they have to release water from their property, and as we all know, water goes downstream, and there are downstream problems that can only be addressed, they can handle that increased flow, can only be addressed through improvements, then they're going to be required to do that. But things in the surrounding area, they're not required to fix those pre-existing problems. So I just want to be clear that everybody understands that.
I understand the pre-existing, I just don't want to make it worse.
And that is the entire goal of a plethora of regulations that we are required to follow.
Yes, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you. I promise this is my last question. So, can you please tell me for the properties within and adjacent to the proposed annexation area, what immediate effect would annexing those properties into city limits have? Since they can stay on septic and well and use island disposal.
If your definition of immediate is the same as mine, there would be no impact.
Okay. Other than possible potential for future development.
For the adjacent properties, that's correct.
Right. Well, for the adjacent properties, yeah, there's no impact.
For the one property that currently has a residence on it, again, there's no requirement to connect to the water.
Right.
Obviously, the septic system can stay as long as it is functioning and meets the county standards. Garbage doesn't change over until a dozen years later. The one thing that does change immediately, once it's actually formally within the city, is that under our utility code, it is assessed a stormwater fee. And that is not clearly understood.
Okay.
So that is the change which would take place when we annex an existing residential property, or a commercial property, but in this case, a residential property. None of the other services kick in, but that particular utility service does.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Actually, could
Unless
I
people
ask a question? We have 6 council people here, just in case, I want to make sure I understand this. If this vote is split, do I vote?
Yes, Mayor, you can break the tie.
Then I have one other question, if I may. Is the annex, the state has laws that pertain to annexation, and we're following those laws. If this were to get turned down, is there a violation, a potential violation of a state law that could be argued as a result of that? Or is that?
No, Your Honor. There is no penalty for denying annexation at the local level.
Okay. Ms. Heisen?
Thank you. I move to approve ordinance number 1795 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and second, Heisen and Ellenberg, to approve ordinance number 1795 annexing as presented. Any other questions, input? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
So let the record show the vote is 5 in favor and 1 nay. Okay?
Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Steve.
We are next going to item number 8, I think. We're moving to contracts and agreements, and we'll start with 8A, which is Clean Water Facility, General Contractor, Construction Manager, GMP, Amendment Number 12. Mr. Arvidsson.
Good evening. Now we want to talk about GMP number 12. This involves our odor control systems for our clean water facility. GMP number 12, the odor control system is one of our promises that we would promise the plant wouldn't stink. So this is a major investment and a major promise to us. This GMP consists of supplying and installing equipment to improve odors, or to control odors, I should say. And basically, it's a large structure on the north end of the plant. I'll show you a picture in a second. Our equipment for this was procured through a competitive proposal process, and the installation costs were negotiated with existing mechanical, electrical, and painting contractors. This is mostly due that we've had poor response on the mechanical, electrical side, so we did go back and get a good price and did cost validation. I might add that Trevor Tees from Hoffman is here, and Chad Oxford, who was our cost validator, was there. So we went down the negotiating path first, and we felt we got a decent price, so we went ahead with that. There are credits for this. We did have an equipment purchase, anticipated for early purchase, and was actually included in the equipment, so we credited that back out. We also have some allowances for some fabricated and fiberglass that'll be procured at a future date, not major items. The concrete structures are actually, we were talking about the parking lot earlier, they are actually contracted in GMP number 10. This is the structure. You can see where it is. It's just this area. How do I get the top button? Okay. It's this area right here. A lot of the mechanical equipment would be contained in these buildings, but the actual odor control structure is right there. And here's some of our latest renderings of that. You'll see more of those tomorrow. Anyway, we did put out a competitive proposal for the equipment. It includes media, blowers, various equipment for the odor control system. We actually got 3 suppliers providing cost proposals, very close. The recommendation of award is there. We are going with a low-cost proposal at $940,000, and they do meet the specification requirements. The actual cost of work is the various components, and it adds up to $3.957 million. That's the actual cost of work. I have to apologize. There was an error in your agenda bill. We transposed some numbers, so we are showing a $4.1 million cost of Kohl's GMP, and the sales tax below that. It's actually $4.353 million plus the sales tax of $378 for a total of $4.732663. So I do apologize for that. We can give you an amended agenda bill here. We just caught that this afternoon when we were preparing for this presentation. This I can say is I think earlier Mr. Powers talked to Plurthia or whatever it is. This is GMP number 12. Our cost of work is adding up to $102 million, 472. So it is getting up there, but we are seeing one more GMP coming down the road. Our recommendation is to authorize the mayor to sign our AIA document for number 12 in the amount of $4,353,876 plus a sales tax of $378,787 with Hoffman Construction for the odor control system.
Okay, you're done with that. Anybody from the audience like to speak or questions about this? Going once, twice, okay, let's take it to council. Any questions, input? Yes, Councilor Munson.
Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, the odor control, the big main equipment was bought from a company in Germany, was it not?
The biosolids dryer was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the dryer, not the odor control. Okay. Nada, got it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Input? Motions? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to make a motion. I move to authorize the mayor to sign A1A document A133, 2009 Exhibit A, GMP number 12 in the amount of, is this the one on the, sorry. Is that one? In the amount of $4,353,876 plus sales tax of $378,787 with Hoffman Construction for odor control system.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem and a second from Councilor Heisen. And that motion is as is printed under the recommended action that you see up there on the screen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 8A is behind us. We'll move to item number 8B, which is Professional Services Agreement, RH2 Engineering, Water Main Replacement Project, Crescent Harbor Road, Regatta Drive, Intersection Improvement. Development Services Director, Kathy Rosen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Island County Public Works is implementing a project to reconstruct the intersection of Northeast Regatta and Crescent Harbor Road on the northeast side of our city. The purpose of that project is to reduce the number and severity of traffic accidents. The proposed intersection improvements include lowering the elevation of the intersection by approximately 9 feet. That will require that all of the utilities in that intersection be relocated. RH2 Engineering is the design firm that is working with the county on the design of that project. And we are proposing that we contract with them to do the design and provide the construction support services for the relocation of our water line that's in that intersection. So our recommendation to you tonight is that you approve a motion authorizing the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with the engineering consulting firm of RH2 Engineering, Inc. for design, bid support, and construction support services for the water main replacement associated with the Crescent Harbor Regatta Drive intersection improvements in an amount not to exceed $39,960.
Okay, you've heard the recommended action. Any from the public? Not many left here. Okay, we'll bring it to council. Any questions, input, thoughts, motions? Councilor Ellenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Kathy Rosen.
Yes, sir.
I cannot support this. This is $40,000 for 800 feet of a 12-inch water line, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I can't support this $39,960 is my understanding, and this is, I'm not going to testify for our city engineer, but the profiles have already been created by the engineer. They are going to provide the bid documents, do the construction management side for the engineering part. The cuts and fills will all be done by the county side of the contract. Roadway design, roadway improvements, paving, traffic control, all of that type of stuff in there, speaking again with our city engineer and reading the information that we've been provided. We're down to basically putting in a water line, which we will do the trenching, the bedding, locate wire, and there's going to be incidental fittings, et cetera, going in there. But, you know, for 800 feet, correct me if it's more than 800 feet, but this is what I read in here.
Yes,
I
it's
haven't seen
approximately
plans.
800 feet.
800 feet, you know, I put $75 a foot on that, which is on the excessive side, but it's a safe side. It's a $60,000 project. I'm going to say it's even a $100,000 project for $40,000 doesn't make any sense to me. And I think this has to go back to the closet where we have a discussion with the county and say, what's going on here? That's what I have to say.
Yeah, my understanding in talking with the city engineer this afternoon is this item, if we need additional information and additional time, can be postponed.
So you're saying it's not critical? that
It's
we
not,
make the
it's
decision?
not in the critical path right now. So we have some time.
So then my next question is, should we not take any action or turn it down right now? That's a legal question.
Mr. Olmberg, if you'd like, you could postpone to a date certain. If you wanted additional information, you could move to postpone it to April, the second meeting in April.
I would hate to put a date on it when we don't know what kind of information we're asking for right now. I would rather staff bring it back when they have basically the whole story about what we're doing and hopefully a new contract price for putting in 800 feet of pipe.
You could move to table the item.
Very much. Thank you very much. I make a motion that we table this item.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to have to be careful about this. We have a motion and a second, Olmberg and Wassinger, to table this item. And Councillor Heisen.
If I could request clarification from Councilmember Olmberg. The reason you want more information is because this isn't costing as much as it should? Did you say it was a $100,000 project based on your estimate that we're paying 40?
Quite the opposite. It's a project probably in the vicinity for just the water line now. That's the information we've been provided. Between, it could even be 50,000 to 100,000. I don't have plans in front of me, but just by going with what we have in our packet and for the cost of the engineering, it's excessive. When most of the engineering is either has been completed even now or in the process of being completed, they are not doing engineering plans and the whole bid and management package just for water. It's a way bigger picture than this.
I'm sorry. I don't know if there's a big part here that I'm missing, but again, you said $100,000 project, but they're asking for 40.
No, this is
so
for
where is the other
engineering? For that, this is for engineering only.
Okay. I was going to say I don't understand where that difference comes
This
from.
agenda item is just for RH2 engineering.
Yes.
Not the work.
This does not include
Right.
work.
It's just contract. Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem?
Excuse me. Mr. Austin, how did you make a determination on the selection of this engineering firm? Was it on a bid?
No, it was not a bid. RH2 is completing the plans for the reconstruction of the intersection for Eileen County. So they already have a lot of the information. They've already gathered a lot of that information. So it just made sense for us to get a price from them to design the work and manage that part of the construction, since they will be out there managing other things for Island County during the construction process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We have a motion to table this item number, what is it, 8B? Yes, Councillor Muntz.
My pea brain is trying to search. When you table something, I didn't think it took a vote. I thought it was just a motion and a second, and it's tabled until it is brought back untabled. I didn't know, is that correct or not? Am I wrong?
So a motion to table is not debatable, and it ends all discussion on the topic. However, I do believe that the motion to table has to be voted on and prevail.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, input? Okay, we have a motion to table, no date, just motion to table at this point. This is item number 8B. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, looks like we'll gather some more information.
Thank you.
Talk to you again later. Thank you, Ms. Rosen. Okay, item 8B is behind us, and we are on to our final item, and no pressure, Mr. Powers, but you got 27 minutes. Item number 10A is Planning Commission 2016 Annual Report to City Council.
Those of you who remember Name That Tune, I can do that presentation in 26 minutes. It is my pleasure, my unique pleasure, once a year to just remind the council of how valuable your planning commission is through the body that we use, which is the annual report to the council. Before I go any further, I want to note that you've had two planning commissioners hang in with you this evening, Mr. Bruce Freeman and Mr. Hal Hovey, both of which are valuable members to your citizen advisory body. I'll also note that staff is excited to have our vacant position filled with Francis Bagarella. Looking forward to starting him a week from today, in fact, with the first meeting. So we'll waste no time breaking him in. The report format is the same that we've been using the last few years. Hopefully the council is familiar with it and comfortable with it. All I really want to do this evening is just make note of a couple of the major accomplishments, and this was on page 3 of the annual report, or page 690 of your packet, which is an odd number, or I mean, it's an even number, but it's a big number. So we've got the major thing that the Planning Commission accomplished for you this year, or 2016, was to help you get your major update to the comprehensive plan accomplished on time. And that is a distinction that not every jurisdiction can make. We met the state deadline through the tireless work of the Planning Commission conducting meeting after meeting and eventually some public hearings on your behalf. So very significant. Also significant, of course, is the update to the capital improvements plan. They assisted us in our coordination with the county as we worked on the countywide planning policy. Another major contribution was their effort on the city's transportation plan. I think that particular project, one of the hallmarks was that we had great public participation, and at those open houses you saw your planning commissioners there listening to the comments coming from the citizens, hearing them firsthand in an informal setting before we moved on to the hearing. And so again, that's a reflection of their dedication to serving you through this committee. And then finally, the last thing that I'll mention is that they were, I think, an integral part to the Windjammer Park Integration Plan. And even though we did, of course, work with a separate citizens advisory group appointed that helped us with that, the Planning Commission also served as a sounding board, helping us and you make sure that that project stood inside of the framework of our comprehensive plan and our overall park planning efforts. So that's really it in terms of what they've done so far for you. Your report also shows what we anticipate their work program will look like for 2017. I can tell you, as is often the case, we've already seen some changes in it, but it was our first best shot at setting out the work program when we started working on this project with them. And then the report is wrapped up with the actual details of all of the actions they took during 2016. So again, staff is very pleased to work with this group. They are a dedicated group of citizens who work on behalf of the community, on behalf of the council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. So we've got 2 members of the public, but not really. They're members of the Planning Commission. Would you like to add anything to the report? Say anything? Mr. Freeman?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm Bruce Freeman. I'm on my second term. Thanks to you folks for allowing me to serve the community. It is a pleasure being part of this process. It's a process I've known for over 30 years, but it's my joy to help you make sound decisions and to move the city forward. Thank you.
We thank you, Mr. Freeman. We thank everyone on the Planning Commission. I can tell you that that's a lot of hard work. I know that. Council? Yes, Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to second that, not only to the 2 that are here, but those that aren't here, some that maybe stepped off the Planning Commission over the last year. You folks really do the heavy lifting. If the public could see the amount of notes and the minutes from those meetings that the stuff you've already sifted through, it makes our work up here much, much easier. And so I very much appreciate the hours that you folks put in, because I know it's a lot. Thank you.
Anyone? Councilor? Anyone else? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Detail on that. And, thank you to the Planning Commission for your hard work. When you make recommendation to the City Council on any item, it has already been refined. It makes our work in the council real easy. So thank you.
Certainly does. Yes, Councilor Wessner.
One of your special members stepped off a curb and hurt himself, but he'll be back. So I too, because of that, know firsthand, like Councilmember Servati said, the amount of data that you guys receive and input can be massive at times. In fact, I think sometimes that you guys really need the iPads. I think we've talked about that before. I've seen some of the packets delivered to the 7-Eleven, and they are quite impressive. So I too thank you for your service, and you truly are a volunteer in your position. So I thank you all very much. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, nice job. You got that done a lot quicker than I thought you would. 27 minutes.
I got the message, Mayor.
Way to go. Jeez. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Powers. We appreciate it. So I think that concludes this meeting. It is 8:30, soon to be 8:40, and I think we'll just adjourn. We are adjourned.